All right. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Tara Garrison. I'm so excited to bring you on the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I love the content you put out, the book you just wrote. I really connected with the message, some of the messages that you're sharing out there. And I always like to start with my guests' stories. So how did you get into the whole fitness, health, wellness arena?
Okay. Well, the short story basically is I was always overweight. Started getting chubby in third grade. It was always this battle. Why can't I just be a normal kid who can just eat? Why do I always have to watch this? Jealousy in high school. How come you can eat 2 Reese's peanut butter cup packs and a Coke and I'm sitting here with half a turkey sandwich, so I've been through that. And then I had 4 kids and gained weight after them and kind of sort of lost it and then would gain it back. So I've been through man, this sucks. I guess everyone else can figure it out but me phase for a long period of my life. The truth is that what ignited my fitness journey was trauma and believing that my body wasn't enough and just marriage problems. And my story, which wasn't true, by the way, my story was I must not be enough. And so it lit a fire under me. And I share that because sometimes really unhealthy wounds can really trigger action. But I guess what I learned through that whole thing. Did I get really fit? Mm-hmm. And I also learned that you never, ever will get what you're looking for if you're trying to prove that you're now lovable. You might feel it momentarily like, oh, see, look, I'm attractive now. But deep inside, there's this chronic pressure of still not good enough, still not good enough, still not good enough. And just so much wounded stuff. So weightlifting was like the ticket that got me there. I was your basic chick who followed bikini competitors on social media and just started doing whatever they did, right? It was just all that, like eating a kind of bodybuilder-ish diet, lifting weights. And I will say, even though it was too extreme because I was acting out of the ego and wounded, it was also at the same time so beneficial for me because I started eating real foods. Because if you want to lose weight, guess what you're going to be eating? A lot of vegetables, protein, real food, not the processed stuff, all of that. Lifting weights, changing my body composition into less body fat, more muscle really helped me feel actually quite amazing, right? And so I share that because I think that sometimes our purpose, for lack of a better word, is found through a lot of struggle and pain and dark times, because thankfully I was able to find a lot of healing modalities and heal all that relationship with myself. And guess what? I still stayed fit. I didn't get fat again. Like the fearful mind wants us to believe if we don't if we're not psychotically obsessed with this, no one will love me and I'm going to get fat and be obese. None of that happened. Instead, what happened is I started training and eating healthy from a place of power and I just love how this feels, but I'm grateful for the fearful mind that kind of taught me a lot of things, a lot of skills before I got to this place that I am now. So I just share that because I know a lot of women have been in that place, man. There's so many wounds around women and our bodies and all of that. And I've been there, but you can get to a place when you do your inner work where you love yourself and accept yourself completely, and you still a baddie. You still go after it. You even better in a much more aligned and easy way. It's like, I'm going to go crush this workout because I freaking like how it feels. I'm going to eat this healthy meal because I want to. I am worthy of this healthy food. I want stuff that's worthy of me. And do I sometimes eat cheesecake or, whatever? Yes. It's a free choice, but I just don't do that a lot because I don't like the way it makes me feel. So that was a lot, but that's basically my whole journey with fitness in, 5 minutes.
I love that. And I love just some of the elements that you highlighted, that so many of us come to this because we are upset with our bodies and we want to change it. And we feel like if we don't hate on our body, that we'll maybe lose that motivation to keep going. And I also see this message, sort of the opposite of that message, coming out a lot in sort of mainstream dietitian, diet culture type magazines, where it's like, hey, you should love and accept your body and not want to change it because being overweight is okay. So where I have a
Yeah.
feeling we sort of fall on that same middle ground in that spectrum where we don't want to hate our bodies into changing it, or also ignore a problem
Yeah.
and not work to
Yes.
improve our body because it's not healthy, because we should just accept it because diet culture is bad. Like, how do we navigate this, and
Yeah.
how do you feel about some of this messaging that's out
Mm.
there?
I have so much deep thinking on this topic, and I appreciate you opening up the conversation. And what it boils down to me is we don't know what love is. That's what I've learned. I'm like, we're confused about what love actually is. We have been raised in such a world of conditional love. I'll love you when you're like this. I'll love you better when you're like that. That I think this body positivity movement that has swung the pendulum, I think it's a step, but it's a pendulum swing. And it's like, holy crap, I'm just trying to get to baseline levels of self-acceptance here, of like, I'm just going to stop hating myself. But this is where the confusion of like, what is love? Because love is not neglect, right?
Mm.
Love is not complacency. And my daughter gave me a really great analogy for this. We were talking about it one time, and she was like, that's kind of like me saying, hey mom, I really need new shoes. My shoes have holes in them and I really need some new ones. And I'm like, no, sweetie, I love you and your shoes. You and your shoes are perfect. They're perfect just the way they are. And she's like, no, but I really need new ones. Like, and my feet are like hitting the ground. I'm like, no, your shoes are perfect, sweetie. Like, that's what I think people think. Some people, not obviously not a lot, but it's kind of that mentality of like, love it, and it blocks people from being able to actually entertain the energy of real self-love, because they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to just like neglect myself. So never mind, let me stay in the self-hatred energy. Right. So, but what is real love? Real love is, I want what's best for you, and I will show up for you, and I'm listening to you. And if you need some help, I'm here for it. Right. So yes, is it healthy for us to, if I don't care if you're 400 pounds right now, is it healthy to get into a place of like, hey, I love you? Yes. That is like, that's got to be established. And that's why I don't get too upset about this. Cause I'm like, I realize it's a step, it's a stepping stone. It's like, okay. And then we have to go into, so what is actually love? Is love saying, I'm going to completely like leave you, neglect you. You're telling me that you don't feel good. You're telling me that you have low energy levels. You're telling me that you have pain all over your body. And I'm saying, well, I love you just the way you are. That's not being loving. Right. And so one of the practices that I do almost every single day when I meditate is I do a little check-in with my body, and I just sit with it and I just feel it. And it's just this moment of, hey, I'm here and I'm listening. Right. And I'm just noticing. It's like, do I feel tension anywhere? Just noticing. And then I'll say, is there anything you need? So I talk to my body like it's like a separate person almost to me. I'm like, is there anything you need? And I might hear things like, hey, actually, I need you to kick it up a notch in training. You've been on your phone a lot. Okay. Or maybe it's just I'm being silly, but I don't care. It's a wonderful practice. I highly recommend. And sometimes I'll hear like, "Ooh, we need some sleep." I'm like, "Yep, I know. I got it." Or sometimes it's like, "You haven't been eating very many vegetables lately. You've been going a little heavy on the grain-free chips and the cottage cheese. Like, can you get some nutrients in?" Okay. It's just, and it's playful and silly, but that to me is actual love. Like, what are relationships that are healthy built on? Respect, right? So do we respect our body? Are we saying, hey, thank you for immune system and all these crazy things that you do all the time that I have no idea how you're doing that, but like, wow, like T cells, I don't really know how y'all work, but wow, like that's amazing, and then love, loving it, admiration, communication. So that's where this whole practice comes in. Honesty, right? Like, so maybe you eat a bunch of crap and your gut is like so bloated, you feel like you're like 9 months pregnant. It's like, okay, I hear you. Sorry. That's going to come out of there soon. I'll be careful with that one next time. Much love. Thanks for dealing with that kind of stuff, And so to me, that's what actual love is with the body, is building a relationship with it. And I find that looking at it almost as a separate entity as you, because it kind of is, right? Like this is going to turn into dust. I don't think that my consciousness is actually this form that I'm in, but I'm really grateful for it. And I love it and I respect it. And I have an actual relationship with it. And I think that when we get too confused into thinking like, this is me, this vehicle that my consciousness is hooked up into is me, when it doesn't, when things are hurting, we take it personally. It's I'm hurting, I'm messed up, I'm fat, I'm blah. And it's really, if we can just look at it and say, that's not me, but my body is telling me that, just like my car might be telling me that it needs gas. If we can start looking at it like that, I think the love thing becomes a lot easier to get into.
I love that. And a friend of mine was talking the other day about just this idea that as women, so many of us, we have like one of the most important things is our looks and our beauty, and that society is telling us this. And then how we hold the idea of aging and getting older, and how we're not going to look the way we want, and we're going to lose some of this. And one of the biggest factors, she's like, I just want to send you a friendly reminder that like, you are not your body. And it's like, it's a jarring realization, like, oh yeah, I'm not. And so we have a body, we are a consciousness or whatever we are, but we have a body. And so I love how you talked about like talking to your body. What does my body need? And I often describe this as take care of your body as if you were showing your body love. It's like, how do I practice self-love, right? It feels so weird. Like, I'm not going to look at myself in the mirror and be like, oh, I love you. Like, what am I going to hug myself? Like, it feels strange to even start to conceptualize it. So what I tell some of my clients is like, you have a body, and treat that body as if you would treat one of your children who you love. So if your body wasn't feeling very energetic and it was feeling really run down, what might you do, right? You would put your body in bed early. You would maybe do some meditations, go get a massage. You would, give it lots of nourishing food. So it's like this, the self-care, that's how we care for and show love, like turn that love into an action. That's how we love our bodies, is we take care of it. And so I feel like self-care, it's not this like woo-woo thing. It's not optional. This is how we show up for ourselves. And then having those boundaries to protect our bodies, and having those, I don't even like calling them non-negotiables, because sometimes, you're sick, or sometimes you're on vacation or whatever. So like having those healthy boundaries can really set us up. So where do you think, I feel like there's so much dogma in the keto carnivore space, in the nutrition space. Where do you think this shows up for us, and how do you think it's damaging people or making them think a certain way when maybe we should be opening up our perspective?
I love how you're talking about understanding that the body is not you, but it does impact us in a lot, right? Like it does impact how my consciousness feels day to day, right? So we are very integrated with this like vessel that we're in. Now in terms of the, dogma, dogma and nutrition, I understand, like, there's a piece of me that like totally gets it, because if let's say whatever is going on in your body, you like carnivore as an example was like the ticket to feeling better. Like it was exactly what you needed. And you went from feeling like absolute crap to feeling amazing. I understand the excitement. I totally get it. And wanting to like share and tell everybody like, oh, this is freaking amazing. What happens though, is that we forget that not everybody has the same set of circumstances going on in their body that we had going on in ours, right? And it's an easy thing to forget, and I've seen it over and over. So that's why I welcome all nutritional approaches, right? And just encouraging people to be real with themselves about the results that they're getting from that nutritional approach. I mean, I think, that I'm specialized in keto, and really was honestly like a big part of the whole keto movement, like rolling out, right? So I've been in it from the beginning, and I've seen a lot of dogma. I mean, that's why I wrote my book, because as much as I love keto and still use it to this day as like an intervention for the right client, it's like, wow, you are almost diabetic. Like you're going to start feeling so much better when we drive down all that inflammation and get your blood sugar regulated. I love that. it's just that when we get into this right, wrong, better or worse, this is a better nutritional approach or a worse nutritional approach for all humans. This is the way that human beings are supposed to eat. And this is the wrong way. And people who eat carbs are dumb people who are sugar burners and like just all this kind of stuff. What we're doing is we're removing ourselves from like our own intuition, right? So somebody who does a phase of keto, for example, let's say somebody's like almost diabetic and they've got gut issues and inflammation and all this stuff, and they do keto or carnivore, and it's like, oh my gosh, life-changing for me. And they lose 100 pounds and they're like, this is so incredible. Oh my gosh. And then things start to change a little bit. And they're like, I'm not really feeling the upgrade that I was feeling on this giant pendulum swing of nutrition that I took. That's interesting. But if we're locked into some dogmatic belief system that this is the best way for all humans to eat, all carbohydrates are going to inflame you, kill you. They're
I
going
am
to make you
keto.
sick.
We're
Right. Yeah. And
identifying
you've
with the
maybe
diet.
built a social media thing around it and you've been preaching it from the rooftops. And I get it. I get it. I've had a lot of these clients, right? They're in that place. And it's simply this. It's your body's not in the same place that it was 100 pounds ago. So you might have some different needs now. You good job. You fixed your metabolic dysfunction. You healed your gut. You restored insulin sensitivity. So maybe perhaps if your body keeps telling you intuitively, like, you know what, I've built a lot of muscle and I'm just really feeling like maybe I should eat carbs again, but I can't because I've been telling people carbs will kill them and blah, 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 blah. It takes that moment of being like, let me just try it out. Let me just see how I feel and let me give it like 4 weeks, just like I did with keto. Let me just see, and I share that just to encourage, like, I don't have any qualms with anybody being excited about something that helped them feel better. Totally get it. Just encouraging us, anyone listening, I guess all of us, to be open to things possibly changing down the road. And that's what short-term keto is. It's like, maybe you're going to feel better being keto forever. Totally give you that. Like, oh my gosh. And here's some actual information, food for thought of when and why you might consider bringing some carbohydrates back in and try it out and see how it goes, and that's all. So I just really try to be like, I often feel like I am giving people scientific information to do what their intuition has been telling them they need to do all along.
100%.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with this. And this is what part of my story, my health journey, what I teach my clients. So my issues was that I started a paleo diet and it helped me get rid of all my asthma, allergies, sinus infections, heal my gut, all sorts of things. And I was like screaming paleo from the rooftop. Yeah. Then I developed insulin resistance, hypoglycemia, PCOS. And I was like, what the heck is happening? This diet just healed me. So I tried to paleo harder. And of course, because nothing changed. And I was like, I just know that eating real food is helpful, but I was missing something. I was missing some sort of variety. You can't just do it harder and do it again if it's not working, right? We cannot beat the dead horse, so to speak.
Right.
So I shifted from paleo to keto macros paleo. So I changed. I took out the tons of so many carbs that I was eating that I didn't realize I was eating. And I got huge results. And then it was like 2 years later, I was like, I feel like I need carbs and I feel like it's not a craving. And I started to incorporate carbs, and wouldn't you know, all my symptoms stayed the same, like all my health, that same level of health that I got rid of. My PCOS didn't come back. My insulin resistance didn't come back. My hypoglycemia didn't come back because I had reached that level of healing. So I could reincorporate the carbohydrates and move a little bit more towards paleo again, right? So this pendulum is swinging. So what people, I feel like, fail to realize oftentimes is that I wish we called them therapeutic protocols instead of diets. Because if we look at a diet as a therapeutic protocol, like, oh, I'm going to try this intervention. When the intervention stops being needed or stops working, then we can shift. We can change paths instead of just keep going at it. And so I love that you talk about this. I love that you talk about short-term keto, because there will be negative effects for many people. if you keep doing keto, like it will reach a certain peak of benefits. And then if you're on keto, if you're on carnivore, if you're eating vegan, I'm sure you're not listening to my podcast, but I'm just saying, if you are doing these things and then you start having that backslide, it means that we need to shift, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's just
being real with ourselves about like, how's this actually going? You know, how am I actually feeling? And I was in the same place, girl, because like when I was in my trauma thingy and going way too hard, improving my value and stuff, I found out that this was right before I started keto. I did my first DEXA scan for body composition. I found out I was 11% body fat and I was shocked. So I was probably like 40% body fat, went down to 11. So when I say like trauma can drive you, you know what I mean? But here's the crazy thing. Like I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that is way too lean. Like, holy crap. I was having kind of like an aha moment, you know? But I had never lost my period. I actually felt amazing, which was kind of surprising, you know, like I was like, okay. And then I went into keto so I came to keto in a real different place. I had just qualified for the Boston Marathon. I had run a 7:30 pace full marathon and was weightlifting like crazy and 11% body fat when I started keto. So it was really different entry point than a lot of people. Right. And I wasn't even tracking food at that point. Right. So I had kind of felt like I figured it out. I'm like, was starting to place in races in Utah. And I was like, yeah, you know, then I did keto. And while I'm grateful for keto for many reasons, I do feel like it was a metabolic like booster in terms of really only responding to physiological hunger, right? Like it really nailed that in. Yeah. But I did keto for a year. I don't think now that I needed to do strict keto for a year coming from where I was at. But what happened to me was I actually gained body fat and lost muscle and I was doing DEXA scans and I was optimizing it. The guy that I was dating at the time was like a keto expert for Quest. And, you know, like and that's how I got into it right early on. But we were eating grass-fed, pasture raised, like really well and, you know, training still and all those things. And I went from 11% body fat to 18, which is not like bad. I'm definitely still lean, but what was interesting was like, I was losing muscle, even supplementing leucine and, you know, amino acids and eating plenty of protein, all those things. I was still losing muscle and I just was not feeling good. And I just also, even though I could go a long time without eating, I felt never satiated at the end of meals. I was like, nah, can I just have like a freaking pint of strawberries or something, you know? And quite honestly, like I don't prefer fatty foods. I never have my whole life. I hated fatty foods as a kid. Right. And so it was this thing where here I am, and this is at the end of 2017. So like keto is just going bananas. And here I am, this keto specialist with my, you know, boyfriend at the time. And we're the keto coaches and we're, you know, go to all the events and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, I don't know, man. I don't know about this. I had done some gut tests and some DNA tests and everything was like, you should eat a lot of carbs for your DNA, for your gut, for all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm doing it. I'm just going back to how I used to eat. And within, I think, how long was it? I wrote this in the intro to my book. Within 9 months, I think it was 9 months of that, I effortlessly, like not tracking food or anything, went from 18% body fat back down to 12.8% body fat. And that was really eye-opening because I wasn't even trying that hard. I was like, that's crazy to me. Like, that's crazy to me, you know? And I was feeling better. I was satiated. I wasn't having these like maniacal, like I got to eat all the keto cookies and nut butters because I'm just not done eating and blah, like all of that was gone. I just felt like I could just freaking eat. My training went up, which is probably a lot of the body composition changes. I gained more muscle than I even had before, you know? So I'm just here as an example to say, and that's different for different people, right? We've got Bronson. Do you know him? Coach Bronson. He's carnivore. He's building muscle like crazy. Awesome. That's working super well for him. He loves it, you know, but my message is just to say, it's like different strokes for different folks, different body. Like don't get so pigeonholed into an approach that isn't really working for you, but theoretically it's supposed to. And that you start denying yourself of feeling amazing, you know, and this is all the while I'm getting astronomical results with clients doing keto. But for me, it wasn't working. I wasn't feeling great. My athletic performance went down. My like just happiness with life was going down. Like I just felt so free after I brought carbs back in. So keto is awesome. That's why I say do keto, not forever for most people, because it's really awesome for a little while for a lot of people. It's really awesome long-term for a very few amount of people. But like, hey, if it's like not working anymore, be open. And I'm here to provide some actual data and research and things on that for people if they want it. So
I love that. That it's just so important what you're saying, because I mean, I talked to the client yesterday and she's like, she's in all the, keto and carnivore spaces. And I feel like what she's telling herself is theoretically, this should work. This should be like, I should try to get higher ketones and I should be doing this. And it's like, just because something is working for a big group of people, we don't know where they are in their journey, right? Someone who, like you said, is about to become diabetic and they have gut issues and they're eating a standard American diet, keto is going to work great for them for that period of time, right? It's going to really help change things. But if you've been at this, you've been keto for like 4 years, and then you find yourself, you're like, oh, I keep going off the rails and having carbohydrates and I keep going off track. It's like, maybe it's time to listen to that. Like, is your body telling you it's time for carbs? Is your body saying, hey, ketosis is a state that human beings were in during winter when food was scarce. It was a stressor that helped us adapt and become stronger and helped us heal for a period of time. But our ancestors intuitively, that they wouldn't reject eating like a berry bush and a honeycomb. They would go have that, because we can't constantly send a message to our body that winter is here. And I think that that's what ketosis is doing. And while it is such a therapeutic, helpful tool for so many people, it was completely instrumental in my health because I was a total sugar burner, total hypoglycemic. Like, it completely changed my life. But I just a few months ago, I was like, you know what? I think I need to go strict keto again. I went strict keto. I gained 8 pounds. That's not what my body wanted. So I have to listen to that. And I don't love to always share my journey, because I feel like people want to they're like, what should I do? And they want to copy me. And you brought up a really good point that I always teach, and that I was trained from the Nutritional Therapy Association. Bio-individuality is key. And so what you're doing is you're teaching people, and what I'm doing is we're teaching people to listen to our bodies and give it what it needs. So the more you have, going back to the beginning of the conversation, when you sit down and you have those conversations with your body, when you have gotten out all the junk food, that's step one. We have to be eating real food. We have to have stabilized blood sugar, so we're not having the blood sugar swings drive us to have these cravings that we can't listen to, right? So if you're craving a junk food, like a packaged food, it's probably a craving. But if you're hungry and you're like, God, all I can think about are like sweet potatoes and strawberries, maybe that's our intuition. Maybe that's our body saying, hi, I need carbohydrates right now, which is okay, right? We have to stop this demonization of carbohydrates, use them as a tool, use these dietary strategies as tools. And you're not a failure. If you come out of ketosis, you're not a failure for having these carbohydrates. So the bio-individuality is so, so important. And I would love to hear, what are some signs that your body might be needing carbohydrates if you've been on this keto carnivore journey for a really long time?
The first thing I wish, do you do gut testing in your coaching?
I do.
Do you work with microbiome labs by chance?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
Cause like, it sucks because like my first thought is like, get a stool analysis. That's my first thought for people. Because like, here's an example. I've seen prominent, people in the carnivore community make videos and say things like, look what happened. I ate this plant and I got like bloated and inflamed and felt like crap. And like, all I can think in my mind is like, you don't have the gut microbial balance to be able to process that. Like, of course, you've been carnivore for 5 years. You're going to eat a really starchy plant. Like you don't have the enzymes or probably the bacteria you need to break that down. But the message to people is like, see how bad plants are. And I'm like, no, I don't mean to be mean, but like it's not the plants, it's you, like not in a mean way, but like like not a
Right.
shamey way, but you just don't have what you need to break that down. Cause I'm like, bro, I can eat like a lot of that stuff and none of that happens to me. And I know why, cause I know I have the bacteria and the enzymes and things that I need to break that down just fine, And so when I think of, people, especially people who might listen to your podcast that like have a lot of cravings, right? And things like that. I mean, my mind just goes instantly to candida and like SIBO overgrowth, like those kind of bacterial overgrowths will cause you to crave sugar like crazy, alcohol like crazy. Like find out, work with Danielle, work with somebody that can help you find out if you're missing like keystone strains of bacteria or if you have some sort of overgrowth. Because if that's the case, it's not your fault. Like if I had candida overgrowth, I'm sure I'd be craving sugar like crazy too, like they are literally like controlling your mind, like eat sugar. So that's my first push is like, find out, give yourself a freaking break, like
yeah, there's billions of them versus one of you. So
yeah,
they're going to win out.
They're
going to beat you. Yeah.
yeah. Your bacteria ganging up on you. It's not your fault. That's my first thought is that, I have used carnivore as an intervention for clients and who have like massive, SIBO or gut, but I'm starting to be even hesitant. If I'm being honest, I'm still kind of in that process right now.
Yeah.
Because as they come out of it, if they haven't fully healed it, like it's not coming up positive. Cause I have seen like, I was like, yay, I figured out how to cure SIBO, right? Like I'm like, put them on carnivore and it kills it. Cause their tests will come back and they don't test positive for SIBO anymore. But being very real, like I'm still in process of, even with some current clients that I've done that with, of like, they start bringing carbohydrates back in and then they start eating sugar because they got restricted so long. And they, that whole mind F that happens with that. And then we start seeing some symptoms come back and I'm like, crap, man. And like, they're kind of in this weird place with like that restrictive thing from the carnivore thing, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is the best approach. So I'm still kind of in that right now, professionally, just being real.
Yeah.
Like, kind
and
of
thank you for sharing
out.
that transparency because like we're all kind of figuring it out. Everyone is so different.
Yeah.
So we don't always have all the answers, right? And we need different tools at different times. And we are learning from every single client that we interact with, right? Like how much of a learning experience is that? So thank you for sharing that. But
yeah, so that's just kind of my thought immediately goes to gut health with this whole conversation, like find out that, and so I use Microbiome Labs personally. I'll have to send you their info. I'm like beyond excited about Microbiome Labs. Like they are amazing front runners on the whole area of gut health. They put on free seminars. I use GI
Map, but I'm excited to.
I'm sure that's great.
Yeah.
Even just the content that they're putting out to educate healthcare practitioners and functional medicine doctors is like, they're like the front runners in my opinion. So I'll send you their stuff. Maybe you can Karan on your podcast.
Karan is amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So sorry. Your question was biofeedback to look for if it might be time to bring carbs back in. Was that what you were saying?
Yes. If it's time to bring carbs back in, because we talk a lot about, when we should be cutting carbs down and how everyone may need to do that. But I don't think we talk enough about when it's time to bring them back.
Yeah.
Because it's like when keto is just like not ketoing for you anymore,
Yeah. And thank you for asking, because I love to share this, because when you go keto, you get a bunch of information like, oh yeah, you're probably going to feel like crap for a little while and you need salt. And like, these are all the things to look for. And like, you might get diarrhea for a little bit while your gut microbiome readjusts, but there's none of that out there for people coming off keto. Right. So anyway, so appreciate you asking.
True,
right.
True.
It's like things to expect. Okay. So, I'll kind of answer both of those. First, signs that it might be time to bring carbs back in. One is that your blood sugar is regulated. And if you're actually in ketosis, as ketones go up, blood sugar goes down. So your morning blood sugar, which is when it should be the highest, if your cortisol is in flow, I would say if your blood sugar in your keto is still above 85, or like if it's over 90 and you're like barely producing ketones, stay keto. Like you still working on that, restoring that insulin resistance. But if you're like in the 70s, your blood sugar's in the 70s consistently all the time, you're making ketones just fine. That's the first tip, that like your blood sugar is good. Like you're responding well and you're becoming more insulin sensitive. So even low 80s, something like that, I would say like you're sitting pretty and you're making ketones too. Like, okay. So that's the first thing to look for, is like, is my blood sugar regulated? And I have to add this. I have to, because this is kind of on that other question of like things to expect. So they did a study on rats that, you hear people say sometimes keto causes insulin resistance. Have you ever heard that? And this
I've heard
is
it
the
and I
study.
know it's not true.
Yeah, okay. But I'll share with your audience in case they
Please,
haven't heard
please.
it. But this is the study that comes from. So they took rats and they put them on, half of them on a ketogenic chow and half on standard American chow, what that would be. And the ones that had been ketogenic, they gave all of them this really high carbohydrate, feast meal. And the ones that had been ketogenic did not, their blood sugar spiked higher, and then it took longer for it to come back down compared to the standard American chow rats. And so the assumption that was made out there was keto messes up your blood sugar regulation and causes you to be insulin resistant. But what people don't share is that after 2 weeks of putting those ketogenic rats back on standard American chow and repeating that, they had the same exact blood sugar response. So in a nutshell, in plain language, the takeaway, at least in my opinion, is this: your body is not used to getting that much carbohydrate when you've been keto for a long time. And so your insulin response, your poor little pancreas is like, what are we doing? And it takes a little bit of time for it to catch up. So I'm just sharing that. So if you've been keto for a while, and like you bring carbs back in and you like, whoa, my blood sugar went crazy. That's to be expected for about 2 weeks after bringing carbohydrates back in. And that should regulate. If it doesn't, okay, then go ahead and maybe explore going back to keto, but just preparing people for that.
I love that, Tara. And I heard from Ben Bickman, the reason that is because when we are ketogenic for so long, the pancreas has this extra insulin sitting around at all times just for when we eat. And because we're not using it, the body is so efficient. It's like, you know what? We have this insulin. It's been sitting here forever. She never uses it. Let's recycle it, put it for something else. And so now your pancreas, because it's so efficient, it loses that first phase insulin response. So now when you eat carbohydrates, it wasn't expecting it. So it doesn't have that like ready to go insulin. So it has to make it. So it's just slower. So you just lost the first phase insulin response, but like you said, it does come back. So you don't lose it forever. And I saw this with me because when I first started adding in carbs, I felt fine, but my blood sugar was up for so I was like, oh my God, I still can't tolerate carbs. But I kept going. So I'm glad that I kept going.
Yes.
Even
And
though
it's such an important conversation to have for keto people, because when I was strict keto, I remember one time, I'm just being very transparent. There's this place in Utah called Sweet Tooth Fairy, and they have cupcakes and they're like insanely good. And they're like pure sugar balls. Right. And I'm keto and I ate probably 3 of them. Right. I went ham on and I literally fell asleep. I'm not a napper. I do not fall asleep. I literally could not go on and fell asleep. I think because my blood sugar spike and drop. I could do that. I mean, let me think. 3 cupcakes. I could eat that. I might feel a little wacky, but I definitely wouldn't fall asleep like that level. Right. And so I'm just sharing that because I think people get the assumption from that of my body can't tolerate carbs. They mess me up. Right. And it might just be some little interim thing like we're talking about here. So just, I think it's a really important conversation to have. Another sign that it might be a good time to bring carbohydrates back in is if you are not feeling satiated at the end of your meals and you just keep going. Like I said, you keep going for all the keto cookies and all the nut butters, and then it spurs some binge and you're just in this chronic binge and restrict cycle. It's because one thing that I shared in my book that I think is helpful is when isolated, the macronutrients, carbs actually have the highest impact on immediate satiety. So insulin is also a satiety hormone, right? And I think for me personally, because I was already so insulin sensitive, I think that's my guess for me, that the reason I was like so unsatiated at the end of the meal, at the end of meals, is because like my insulin response was so low being on keto that I just was not feeling full. And that's why I know my body was like, can I just have a freaking apple? Like, I know if I can just have an apple or like some blueberries, you know, or a whole freaking pound of strawberries, I know I will be good to go, but I'm not. I'm just sitting here like maniacally wanting more stuff, you know? And so that if you're feeling that at the end of all your meals and it's leading into binges and all that stuff, like you might want to just try incorporating some sweet potato or, you know, fruit at the end of your meal or something like that and see how you do, because you might just be ready for that normal insulin response that happens when we eat, that creates satiety, and you can move on with your life. A third big one for me, because I'm also a personal trainer, is athletic performance, body composition. So maybe you lost a lot of body fat and that's really great, but like you're going after it in the gym or some sport and you're just like not feeling it. You're just having a hard time performing. Everyone's different. Some people actually do build more muscle on keto. I personally think there's a genetic factor and also a inflammation factor, because if you're really inflamed all the time and then you drop into keto, it's going to be easier to recover from your workouts and build muscle if you're eating adequate protein. But not everybody's in that boat. Everybody's different, bio-individuality. And for me, I was definitely not in that boat, you know?
Yeah.
And so if your athletic performance is suffering, like I ran the Boston Marathon in ketosis as an experiment. It was the worst experience of my life. That being said, I have trained ultra marathoners and marathoners in ketosis and they killed it. Right. So part of my reason is because it was hot and they didn't let me bring my ketones with me and I got dehydrated. Okay. So it's not all keto's fault. No matter what diet you're on, if you're dehydrated running a marathon, you're going to suffer. But even in my training was okay, but it was nowhere close to where I had been when I was eating carbs. And I tried everything. I love ketone esters. I love Frankiosa from Ketonade. I love, you know, ketone salts. I was supplementing crazy. For me, it just wasn't a go. That's okay.
Right. And my friend Michelle Hearn, she won 100-kilometer race, and she's a keto athlete. So
and
there's
Zach Bitter,
so much in, it was her coach, like complete individuality. So it's like finding what works for you and being okay if keto isn't it, right? And like you said, normalizing that your blood glucose graph is not going to be a flat line, and that's okay. Like we don't need it to be a flat line. We don't want a mountain range. We don't want giant valleys, but we don't want it to be flatlined, because that would mean you're dead. Right.
Oh my gosh. Make that your clip for this episode. So good. Trying to think this is a big one I really like to share. Neurotransmitters are a big part of the work that a big part of my work. I'm obsessed with neurotransmitters. And I like to talk about how, like, okay, so how do I sum this up quickly? People have different baseline neurotransmitter levels, and that is much of what shapes our personalities. So people who are high in dopamine or sensitive to dopamine, but we just say high because that helps people understand it better, like dopamine dominant people, they're driven, competitive, strategic thinkers, kind of like engineer brains. I see everything. That's dopamine, right? People who are high in adrenaline, like lots of variety and change and, kind of like fly by the seat of my pants. And people who are high in glutamate are very emotional and more connected to their feelings. And a lot of times the binge eaters, and they're, kind of take things personally sometimes because they're very, very sentimental and they can be prone to anxiety and things like this. So, my point with this in the keto conversation is this: when you are on a ketogenic diet, you will drive up dopamine. When you eat a diet that's mostly protein and fat, dopamine gets favored. And this is why. So there's, I'm trying to make this as simple as I can. So your blood-brain barrier, there's tryptophan, and that comes from all foods pretty much, but especially proteins, meats, right? It's an amino acid, tryptophan. Tryptophan helps us make serotonin. And then there's one called tyrosine, and there's others, right? But I'll just kind of keep it simple. Tyrosine helps us make dopamine. And those two, tyrosine and tryptophan, compete to get across the blood-brain barrier of like, am I going to make serotonin more? Am I going to make dopamine more? And so when we eat a diet that's mostly fat and protein, tyrosine wins more and we produce more dopamine. I think this is why a lot of people feel amazing on keto. I don't just think it's the blood sugar regulation. I don't just think it's the ketones giving them energy. I think it's also a lot of dopamine because that feels good. A lot of dopamine feels real good. You're like, dun, 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 hey, life, what's up? I'm ready to go now. Keto also promotes GABA, which is like the brakes on our brain. It helps us feel cool, calm, relaxed. Everything's okay in the world, right? And GABA it's produced basically from the synthesis of glutamate, which makes us really anxious. So here's my point. You take somebody who's really anxious all the time and has low dopamine, you put them on keto. Now they've got more dopamine and their glutamate's being turned into GABA. So now they're feeling confident, cool, calm, relaxed. Everything's good in the world. They're going to feel really, really good. Okay. I think this is part of the reason some people love keto more than others. On the flip side, let's talk about serotonin. When you are eating fewer carbs or no carbs, you are not going to favor serotonin production as much, right? So that whole tryptophan thing. So if you eat a diet that's high in protein and carbs, you'll favor tryptophan will win a little more. So you take those carbs away, serotonin is not going to be produced at as high of levels. If somebody's really just good on serotonin, they'll be fine. But if you take somebody who's already low serotonin and you drop them into keto and they're making even less serotonin, they might start feeling really emotional all the time. I don't know why I'm crying so much. I have either constipation or diarrhea all the time. I'm not sleeping well. And so that's another thing. It's like, if you're that person that I just said, you're on keto and you're crying all the time, super emotional, I just feel like your life is falling apart, you can't sleep well, all of that. Hey, let me be the message deliverer that you may really want to consider bringing some carbohydrates back in and getting your serotonin back up. You might also want to take some 5-HTP and anything you can to get your serotonin back up. Okay. And if you really want to stay keto and that was you, please take some 5-HTP and do anything that you can to get exercise to get your serotonin levels back up. So that's just like another, and I explain this in detail in my book, but that's another consideration of like, how are you actually feeling on keto emotionally and looking at the neurotransmitter impact of the dietary approach you're using.
I love that. I haven't heard that or considered that before. So that's really great information. And I know that you have to go. I just have one more quick question before. So one of the things that I think people might be afraid of when it comes to adding carbs back in is that they're going to start gaining weight. So, and I know that our, working out, we didn't even talk about exercise and working out. So maybe we need a part 2, but how can we utilize the carbohydrates in a way that is going to benefit us and not maybe overdo it and come into some of those same patterns, and then particularly using movement?
Excellent question. Okay. So first thing is, I'm so glad you asked that because I forgot to say on the things to expect.
Yeah.
When you bring carbohydrates back in, you're going to retain more water. So 3 to 4 grams of water per gram of carbohydrate you eat is going to start getting stored in your muscles and liver. So expect the scale to go up. It's not fats. Do you feel it's not about it. You can't gain 4 pounds of adipose tissue overnight.
Right.
Adipose tissue, that's physiologically impossible. It wasn't body fat. Okay. So please be okay. Just don't weigh yourself. Don't weigh yourself, please.
Don't do it.
And if you're feeling, I feel fluffier or whatever, just say there's water. It will regulate. Okay. That's why when people go into keto, they're like, I lost 5 pounds in 3 days. I'm like, no, I'm sorry to tell you this. You didn't actually lose 5 pounds in 3 days of body fat. You just lost a bunch of water. So get your salt in right now. Yeah. Okay. So it's just like a regulation thing that happens. And if anybody wants this, I'm not trying to like promote my book, but my book has a workout.
Oh, please promote your book. Yes.
With bringing carbohydrates back in. Like, it is literally like, here is how you do that. You slowly titrate up your carbs, drop your fats. Let's make sure we do these kind of workouts, which, the synopsis is weight training, using some high intensity interval training in there to make sure you're utilizing the carbohydrates that you're eating. Right. Because if you just, and last thing I have to say is you're probably going to go through a little binge phase. Okay. You haven't been eating carbs, and your little inner 6-year-old is going to be like, I get to eat carbs again. And you're going to eat stuff that isn't sweet potatoes. And it's a really great opportunity to take a look at your relationship with food and do some inner work there, and just don't shame yourself. It's normal. It's okay. You will get there. You know, you learned keto, you can learn a healthy carb approach. And at the end of the day, what it's going to look like is almost exactly like keto with healthy carbs added back in, right? But just giddy up. You're probably going to binge on some stuff. It's okay. You're a human being. You will get there. So don't get afraid and be like, I can't trust myself with carbohydrates. It's just, it happens after restrictive diets like keto, which is a restrictive diet, you know? So like, give yourself grace and know that you can get there, and don't judge it all by your old behaviors coming back right when you go
or
out
like
of.
week 1 out of the gate. It's not going to stay the same. Keep learning, keep asking questions, stay open, and connect with yourself. So thank you, Tara. This has been so informative, so helpful. I think this is a conversation that needs to be had, because there's so many people on that other end. There's a lot of people just starting out, but then there's a lot of people who've been at this forever. And sometimes carbs are the answer. Who would have thought, right?
Different strokes for different folks.
Yes. So thank you so much for coming on. We're going to link to all your socials, your book, your website, and everything in the show notes. And just appreciate you coming on here and everything you shared today.
So awesome talking to you. Thank you, Danielle.
You too.